And yeah, I don't know if we're quite as much as we should be, but while we don't have very big militaries, we have pretty modern military equipment and training and strategy and stuff. So,
well, that's the thing. We have a focus on small. America has the benefit of having a large military with lots of numbers, so American tactics reflect that. We have always had a comparatively small military. Now, it's never been quite this small, at least not since the late 18th century, but it was always been small, and so we've always emphasized specialized, kind of specialized small unit tactics.
Yeah,
and that's why. And we generally we even practice those small unit tactics against the Americans, and generally they are effective against the Americans with much larger numbers because that's what we're good at.
I remember reading an article a few years ago where I can't remember the context, but it was some sort of like special ops simulation versus the US versus the UK, and the UK won like every round or something like that. I can't remember the context, but.
It was, I think it was 150 Marine commandos versus 1,500 regular army infantry.
Deng is saying British subsequent with Tomahawk cruise missiles. Those could seem to get the coast easy to get the dam. Yeah, it's probably true.
I was thinking of, I think it's a yearly war games exercise that takes place in California.
Okay. Might have been that, yeah. Oh, well, we only beat Californians. That's not as impressive. To
be fair, they get shipped off all over the place, didn't they?
Yeah, I expect so.
So they're not all wimpy Californians. There's the odd, red stater in there.
Yeah, fair enough, gamer. Born gamer.
We have to learn from history is that peace comes through strength. It doesn't come through weakness. And I say that to you in a country that since 2010, go to Plymouth, see what's left of the Royal Navy. It's absolutely pitiful. Look at the number of fighter jets we have. Look at the British Army, now denuded, down from 100,000 people when Cameron came to power to 72,000 men and women today, in the face of the most dangerous world we've ever seen. And in the face of a world where Russia is now linking up with Iran and linking up with China, we face real threats. And yet, the Labour Party have nothing to say. They'll have a defence review, and they might increase defence spending to what is, I think, a very miserable 2.5%. A Labour Party who want to sign up to the European Union's defence union, a union that would have power over procurement.
I'm making a very nasty prediction now that if Labour do, quote unquote, increase military spending, then they'll just count military spending as sending money to Europe to build up a European army.
I think the same, yeah. I think Labour will basically what they'll do is they'll put a lot of money nominally into military spending, defense spending, but a lot of that money will end up getting funneled to Europe in the hopes of creating military integration in the name of creating a European fighting force, in the hopes that we'll be able to create an army on par with the likes of China and Russia and the United States in terms of size. But here's the thing. Russia and China and the United States are all single nations with singular militaries, with singular military doctrines. Europe is multiple countries with multiple fighting forces with very different military doctrines.
Yeah.
that level of integration, it's not only that it's not necessarily possible. It's not that it's not possible. It's that it will be very clunky, and so this European army, even if I did support it, which I don't, it would not be on par with its contemporaries, even if it was of similar size.
Even if we all spoke the same language, it still wouldn't be. It still wouldn't be similar enough. No.
No.
The US is mostly just one culture, and it's formed from a few cultures originally, but barely. And it's the primary influence is Anglo culture. So it's essentially just the UK with more liberty and way more land, which is a pretty good combination, to be honest. Over here, Europe's strength has always been in the different cultures and the fact that they, yes, in the past they conflict with blood, but these days they don't have to conflict with blood. They can conflict in lots of different ways. So we should not, as you say exactly, we should not be treating ourselves like the US. I think initially the EU started under the assumption that in order to compete with the USSR and with the US, Europe had to be united. I'm not sure that was ever true, but it certainly isn't now with the USSR gone. And I'm not sure we need it to compete with the US either. But furthermore, I don't think that's the intent of the EU anymore either. I think quite a long time ago it became a husk of its original intentions because it's so unaccountable that everyone who wants a cushy, high-paying, vaguely political job just ends up there. Even if it was never intended to be that way, it became that because it's so unaccountable, because it's too distant from actual democratic processes.
It's basically just one big pseudo-democratic bureaucracy that exists pretty much for the singular purpose of creating policy for policy's sake, which is why it ends up creating endless red tape in pretty much any industry it touches, and lining the pockets of everyone involved in it. That's its purpose, pretty much. Now.
It is now. Certainly is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
After 14 years of our own services being run down, what we need is reform. Because our services are broken, we need reform to be a strong voice in Parliament and in the country to say, firstly, we must rapidly increase defence spending to make sure not only are we strong, but we show to America that we are a worthy NATO ally. We must build up defences and do so very quickly by moving to 3% of GDP. Vital. And
nuanced view, I don't think that's actually necessary if the US is being run well. If you have Trump in charge of the US, technically speaking, we don't need much of a military. We could be fine on 2%. But if it's still Biden, if they rig it in 2024, then yeah, we need to increase to 3 or maybe even 4% of GDP to wall off the threats that's going to create in the near future.
I would argue that it would be better to increase it to 3-4% for no other reason than simply because we shouldn't be over reliant on another country's military.
That's true, of course. I just mean technically.
Like,